Before all hope died, I used to have this stupid dream that shit would be saved. That we would be in bed together like the old times with the fan on, the smoke from our weed drifting above us, and I'd finally try to say the words that could have saved us. In a better world, I would have kissed her over the ice trays, and that would have been the end of all our troubles. But you know exactly what kind of world we live in. It ain't no fucking Middle Earth. I just nodded my head and said, "See you around, Lola," and drove home. You don't know what it's like to grow up with a mother who never said a positive thing in her life, not about her children or the world, who was always suspicious, always tearing you down and spitting your dreams straight down the seams. When my first pen pal, Tomoko, stopped writing me after 3 letters, she was the one who laughed. "You think someone's going to lose life writing to you?" "Of course," I cried. I was 8, and I had already planned that Tomoko and her family would adopt me. My mother, of course, saw clean into the marrow of those dreams and laughed. "I wouldn't write to you either," she said. She was that kind of mother, who makes you doubt yourself, who would wipe you out if you let her. But I'm not going to pretend either. For a long time I let her say that what she wanted about me. And what was worse, for a long time, I believed her. That's life for you. All the happiness you gather to yourself, it will sweep away like it's nothing. If you ask me, I don't think there are any such things as curses. I think there's only life. That's enough. All right, what's up, fantasy fans, college professors, and literary fiction aficionados? Today, I'm going to be talking about what is, in my opinion, the best literary fiction. Genre is a spectrum, but this is a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. It's taught at universities, but I think that this is the perfect literary fiction novel for epic fantasy fans, specifically fans of J.R.R. Tolkien and Alan Moore. And a little bit of introduction. I found out about Junot Diaz from his review of Illuminations by Alan Moore. Alan Moore is one of my favorite authors. He is mainly known for his comic book work in Watchmen and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Swamp Thing, all that. But he's been publishing novels and short stories, and Junot Diaz did a review of the short story. Junot Diaz is the author of The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. He also is the author of the short story collections Drown and This Is How You Lose Her, which are all set in the same world, but you don't really need that to go into The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. So what you have in this is you have a book, and you may be wondering, like, what does this book have in common with Lord of the Rings and epic fantasy? So in this book, you follow the character of Oscar, which he is this Dominican kid that doesn't really fit in with what society expects of Dominican American boys. And this is actually a very thought-provoking examination of how culture can influence an individual and how this societal expectation can harm young children and the expectation of manhood and sexuality in this. It's heartbreaking as much as it is thought-provoking. So what you have with the character of Oscar is you have this kid that is obsessed with Lord of the Rings, specifically he's obsessed with fantasy, sci-fi, anime, all things nerd, comic books, but he's a huge fan of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And in this book, you have a lot of analogies to what's going on, war in Santo Domingo when his mother is growing up. You have a lot of the cartel leaders and different crime lords being compared to the Nazgul, being compared to Lord Sauron. There's a scene where some of the Dominican women are praying for Oscar's mother, and it's kind of likened to the elves within Middle Earth and some of the magic that they weave, and that prayer almost feels like the elves working there. I'm butchering my explanation of this, but a lot of the real world events in this are compared to Tolkien's Legendarium, and this isn't like once or twice throughout the book. No, it's damn near every other page, to the point where I think if you don't understand Tolkien's Legendarium, at least on a basic level, I'm not saying you have to watch all the movies extended cut or you have to read every single book, Children of Her and all that. I definitely recommend reading all of Tolkien's Legendarium. It's pretty awesome journey to go on. I just finished last year reading all of the Legendarium. But aside from like the 12 volume history of Middle Earth stuff, but I think at least a passing knowledge of Middle Earth will greatly enhance your enjoyment of this book. And in this book, we have Oscar, who he's this nerdy kid. He's never kissed a girl. He's never, he's still a virgin. And this virginity, Oscar's virginity, kind of is a source of self-conscious shame for him, because Dominican boys, especially Dominican American young men in this time period in along the East Coast of the United States, like just in the way he grew up and where he grew up, it's very rare to have, a 19-year-old virgin Dominican kid, because their culture is all about, you know, having tons of girls. And it's actually a pretty lecherous, and the way women are viewed by a lot of the characters in this book is not great. And I don't think you're supposed to like it. And so you get Oscar as he's trying to lose his virginity, and he's trying to become a man in society's view of what a man is. But then it also takes a step back and looks at Oscar's sister, which is another amazing character in this book. Loved Oscar's sister. And then you look at Oscar's mother, who is herself not as great of a character. And you go back through the entire lineage of his family. You go back to his grandfather. You look at a lot of the men in his family, a lot of the women in his family, and it's not just one bad person influencing him to have these, toxic views, not just toxic towards women, but himself. It is reinforced by the attitudes of his entire family. And I'm not saying like his family are all terrible people, because they themselves have been brainwashed to believe that, sexual gratification is what gives someone value. And Oscar, a lot of his perceptions of the world, he does have to layer it and think of it. Sometimes he thinks he's in a comic book or an anime. That brings me to, he references Alan Moore a lot, which is probably brought about by Junot Diaz's own love for Alan Moore. I do think you don't have to know all of Alan Moore's stuff. I read Miracle Man, Watchmen, Swamp Thing all before getting into this. I think you definitely need to have a passing understanding of Watchmen, because the final scene of the book is very dependent on a scene of Watchmen. So this may not be the easiest thing to enter into. I'm not saying you have to read Watchmen. You have to read Tolkien's Legendarium. You have to read everything in Middle-earth, but at least a passing knowledge of both of those will greatly enhance your reading experience with this Pulitzer Prize winning novel. You don't just have the character of Oscar here, you also have the character of Junor, who was a character from his Drown collection. And Junor is kind of a sympathetic, empathetic version of toxic masculinity. Like Junor, he plays girls, he's toxic, he's built up a lot of bad habits that he can't shake. He tries to be a better person, he just can't. But you do see his love for Oscar and his love for Oscar's sister push him to be a better person. He never quite finishes his arc into becoming a better person, but you can see he does have care for Oscar, but it's not always, he doesn't always have the best way of showing it. And what happens in this book, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but it is tragic, and it is showing, it is telling that we as a society put so much value in sex and so much prestige and so much value in lustful. I'm not saying that if you're promiscuous that's bad. I'm just saying Oscar should not have been made to feel lesser because he was a virgin at 20 years old. We look at this now in 2024 and it's like, what was wrong with these people? But this was the 90s, and he's stuck out like a sore thumb. And, Oscar does a lot of dumb things in this book, but I think it is an exercise in empathy to see what he's going through and to still feel for him. And I think that this is nothing short of a masterpiece. And I do think if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, if you are at all in tune with nerd culture, you owe it to yourself to read Oscar Wilde. This is a phenomenal book. It's just truly wowed me, and it is heartbreaking as much as it is evocative and thematically rich. And I hope y'all enjoy The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. Peace.